Dame Jenny Shipley, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
I appreciate your time. Oompher is all about inspiring people to achieve extraordinary things. So who and what during your life and career has inspired you?
Well, actually, the future inspires me. It did when I was a girl, it does today when I'm in my 60s. And what I mean by that is I think every generation has to do what they can to improve things. So when I was a mother with young children, I tried to involve myself in the community, in the leadership roles where I could make a difference. In politics, obviously, I involved myself in both thought leadership and the country's leadership. When I was Prime Minister, I tried to position New Zealand in the world and also resolve the issues at home. So what inspires me are ideas, but also people who saw the leadership potential. My husband, who was just a complete and utter believer, even as a young man, that I should be who I am and not someone else. My father was a very influential person, and also my mother. And then external players, Golda Meir was a person who believed in what was possible, controversial but very successful.
Okay, and did you have some quite good political mentors when you were in politics who you would turn to for advice?
Well, when I went into politics, Ruth Richardson and I were close friends. She was my electorate member of Parliament, and I was, a mother with 2 children, and obviously involved extensively in local government leadership and in community leadership. But she kept saying, you shouldn't be here, you should be there. So she was very influential in not only telling and encouraging me to think about what was possible, but also to try and get a group of people who were like-minded together, who could then make a change.
Okay, awesome. And you entered politics at 35 back in 1987, before becoming the first leader of the New Zealand National Party, and the first female Prime Minister in New Zealand. So what inspired you to get into politics, and specifically, was that wanting to make a difference?
New Zealand had to grow up.
Yeah.
We were like the baby in the bassinet from Feeding UK, and we had a closeted life.
Yeah.
My generation realised that as the UK went into the European Union, they were going to cut the nursery schools.
Yeah.
And we were very heavily in debt, and my generation thought we could do better.
Okay.
Rightly or wrongly, we decided it was time for us to step up.
Yeah, and it was mid-1997 when you sort of started, or early 97 when you started gathering some support to take over the leadership from Jim Bolger. Was that you realising that if you really wanted to make the difference that you wanted to make, you needed to be in a position where you could make that difference?
No, that's not how I would portray it.
Okay.
I mean, I was a minister by the time I was, 38.
Okay.
And that was because I had leadership qualities that Jim Bolger saw in me, and he kept appointing me to big roles, which he asked me to resolve. You don't decide independently that you're going to be the leader of the National Party. It's a succession issue, it's a strategic issue, it's a coalescing around what do we do next, could we win a 4th term if the leaders were changed. And so those conversations evolve, and eventually the changes occur. It's not a person like myself waking up and thinking, I'm going to move a leadership change. That's simply not how it works.
And is it more about, so it's more about knowing the game, or being very good at policy and being talented in your own right?
You have to be all of the above.
Okay.
So you have to have brains and ideas and curiosity. You have to have a huge work ethic of just simply being prepared. And that's true in corporate life too. Understanding the strategy, understanding the goals that are set. If you are responsible, you doing it. If others are responsible, holding them to account.
Yeah. And what do you believe today was the reason that you did so well in politics? Do you believe it was your leadership skills that put you in such good frame?
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any other explanation. I mean, my male colleagues chose me as the leader of the National Party. There weren't a group of women coalescing around women. It was around, what does New Zealand need now, and who is the best person to take that leadership responsibility. That was the conversation, and that's how I became the leader. It's filled with commerce degree and legal degree graduates. Look, around board tables or kitchen tables or the parliamentary cabinet table, we need diversity. We need diversity of ideas, we need diversity of experience, we need a diversity of understanding who we can be at home as New Zealanders, and a diversity of understanding where the middle classes of the world are, because they're the people we do business with.
Yep.
And you need people with minds and appetite to engage at that level. So actually, it doesn't matter what their qualification is.
Yep.
I employed zoologists and economists and anthropologists and sociologists as Prime Minister. They needed to be scholarly, and thoughtful, but they also had to have attributes to think about when you bring public policy ideas through, how they'll impact on people. So you need judgment and scholarship.
So it is important to have a degree of some sort, though?
Definitely.
Okay.
Well, a qualification.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have to be a university-based experience. In my view, there are some so absolutely superb people. So Turiana Turia is one of the best New Zealand leaders we've seen in the New Zealand Parliament, and she doesn't have, an academic qualification to my knowledge, so to speak. It's her other attributes that have been completely outstanding, and she is a leader of the highest quality, who in my view has had a profound impact for the better, not only on New Zealand Parliament but public life.
And you yourself held various ministerial portfolios from ACC to State Services, Transport, Social Welfare, Women's Affairs, Health, etc. What one did you enjoy the most and why?
There wasn't one that I enjoyed the most. I was given a job and they were all very big jobs. In the first part of the 1990s, a lot of it was trying to contain public expenditure while still delivering quality service. And to some extent it was not so much enjoyment as what was right. So the middle class had captured a lot of the welfare state, and we had to take some tough calls to say, actually, this wasn't designed for you, so we're going to take some of this back, and naturally that causes a bit of a fuss.
And what do you make of the state of politics today, Dame Jenny, of what's going on?
Well, look, it's complicated. I think the digital world is making the way in which we both communicate with and understand each other extremely complex, and a lot of the chatter and noise in this election campaign is around what we used to understand is how the body politic worked, and now clearly the channels to market, which are much more diverse. I don't want to comment or pass judgment on the detail, but I do think that our democracy is opening up. We have to think about the ways in which dialogue occurs and the propriety or otherwise around that. But for me, look, we need to exchange views, and I don't think people should steal information and then purport it to be something it is not. On the other hand, if people are doing something wrong, they should be held to account. I'm pretty straightforward. But look, heaven save us if we get to a point in this country where we can't have robust conversations, because great ideas come out of debate. And so for your generation, you have to worry about and debate the sort of New Zealand you want to create. Because people like me stood on the shoulders of others who came before me. And the next generation of young leaders, as they decide what careers they'll go into, it's not just being qualified. What do you want New Zealand to be like? What are your attitudes? What are your aspirations? And do you have the courage to then articulate your opinion around what those things should be? Because that's where the contest is. It's not with the left or right, it's with the future. And I want the next generation of young New Zealanders to think about, building their own skills. So think of yourself as building your leadership identity, where your reference points are, what your qualifications are, what your knowledge base is. But knowledge is so fluid. Knowing how to acquire knowledge is the trick, not being a bundle of knowledge. It's attitude that you need, reference points of right and wrong, good and bad, possible and probable, desirable, and then an open mind. So that the new markets are as of greater interest to you as the old markets.
And what can the young people of today be doing to help make the change that they want to see in the future?
You have to explore what you don't know. I mean, frankly, it's easy and lazy to only articulate what you do know and you've learnt. The whole concept of scholarship today has to build the confidence in learning, but the other half of it is what you don't know today is what's going to be most valuable tomorrow. So it's like anchoring yourself in your knowledge, but opening up with that curiosity. I haven't met a person I view as a great leader who is not curious. Rigid leaders are usually 3-year wonders. They make a lot of noise, but are they durable? Very often not. Do they leave a legacy? Usually only one of damage. The people who are the builders, not the wreckers, are the people who are constantly curious, constantly looking for, while they might know this, what have they missed? Because so often law comes unstuck, not by what you do, but the unintended consequences. So a curious person who's got good quality people who are also curious working with them can test those boundaries. So the concept of a single idea is the easy piece. Testing it so it has rigour and durability and sustainability is where the intellectual challenge.
Okay.
is. So for people who want to shape the future, it's not only that capacity, but it's also that curiosity and dynamic that really make outstanding leaders a step ahead of the rest.
Okay. So having worked with Winston Peters and New Zealand First in the past, are you worried that after this election, our National Party today may be forced to go into a coalition with Winston Peters, and that may be quite unsettled from your experiences?
Look, I think you should take personalities out of the concept of MMP.
Yeah.
I think that, as far as I can see in the future, the two big parties and their leaders will be, I guess, the main course in any future government. And then there will be a range of parties that New Zealand will vote in that they want to bring the flair and flavour. And our own Prime Minister currently, Mr John Key, has been outstanding in making clear what he is there to do, and then also identifying how he can work with other parties under certain circumstances. So I think the contest of what does the coalition agreement look like and the bottom lines is yesterday's thinking. It was certainly present in my generation because MMP was very new, and people who had come out of first past the post were learning how to put coalitions and the concept of coalitions together. But I think John and others of this current generation have taken that a long way forward. And so leaders today, they say, well, this is our preference, but we want that, although we'll trade this.
Yeah.
And I think the skill of leadership in building a coalition, you are coalescing around some common ideas. But John has also been able to say that if you're a minority party, you can also identify the things that are really important to you. So if we use the Maori Party, who's been the most recent coalition, whana ora was very important to them. And so the Prime Minister said, well, this is not something we would promote, we agree it's not inconsistent with the direction we're going, and it's clearly something that's important to your voters. So it's a win-win, a build-build. And that's a much more constructive approach to coalescing and coalitions than bottom lines. So I hope the culture of coalition, whether it's a grand coalition between the two major parties, and by the way, more often than not, the Parliament agrees rather than disagrees. If people who sit in the Parliament watch, often the big parties are voting together, not are voting against each other. So the concept of where you get people coalescing around agendas and ideas and emphasis is a work in progress, and I think it's come a long way. It is a much more productive environment, and of course there'll be some flashpoints. You know, personalities are personalities, and one or two of the current ones still have, you know, some colour in their personalities, and there'll be flashpoints of news. But look, it's static. I have every confidence that the leaders of the two big parties, whoever is the Prime Minister, both now and in the future, it's their job as the leaders of the major parties to work out, you know, who's the main course and who's dessert.
Yeah, absolutely. And from your time in politics and business, you would have learned a lot. What would you sum up as some of the key lessons?
Look, leaders lead. I often hear a lot of people talking about strategy and process, but actually great countries and great companies are built by good strategy, but then leaders executing it. So hand-wringing and circling ideas is all very well and it's comfortable, but leaders grasp ideas and move them forward.
So what makes a great leader then?
Well, I think a great leader both listens and works with people to build ideas, but then will say, this is the direction we're going, this is the destination, and they have that ability to have others follow. A great leader will not only chart the direction, but set it alight so that it's on the move, and when they're not there, it will still keep going. A test of a great leader is that what you've begun continues regardless of your presence.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dame Jenny, since your time in politics, can you tell us a bit about that? Have you enjoyed being on boards such as Genesis Energy and the China Construction Bank?
Well, look, I took my governance skills that I obviously use, my leadership and governance skills that I acquired in my political life, and decided to apply them in different ways. So look, building wealth is key. And it's a wealth of experience and knowledge and people and resources. Because actually if we don't do that, there's nothing to share. So for me, you know, in government I tried to thoughtfully allocate resources. In the private sector I try and thoughtfully build resources. So stakeholders and shareholders do well. And employees, of course. I've loved my time post-politics. I don't have to do things. I do what I want to do. And that's a nice prerogative as a leader to have. So in politics, it's very driven. Today, I seriously If I don't want to do things, I say no.
Yeah.
And that's a very nice space to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. And going by major business trends today, where do you believe the opportunities are for people coming through?
Adaptability.
Okay.
So you have to have leadership qualities and leadership intent, but think of yourself and your own leadership purpose. I've had many roles, and I often describe them as cloaks I've worn. I mean, people think being the Prime Minister is who you are. I often say, don't let roles define you, you define the role. Because it allows you to move in and take a responsibility and then move on. And create a new opportunity and make a contribution and then move on. And to me, leadership is not something that the role defines, it's what you do with it. And I am a person who makes it my business to get stuff done. So think as a young person around who you are and what you stand for.
Yeah.
And as you go through your career, your academic career and then your early career, think of yourself as building your leadership identity and capability and then apply it in private life, in public life, in corporate life.
Yeah, and having spent quite a bit of time in business, do you see any industries that are up and coming that really excite you?
Oh no, look, it is an explosively interesting world.
Yeah.
I remember someone when the internet was in its early years said you should think of it as a fist, but the explosion of opportunities that it creates are really in the minds of individuals.
Okay.
And their capacity to then bring these forward and create new companies.
Yeah.
What I am clear of is that New Zealand needs probably a dozen new billion-dollar companies and probably another 20 new half-billion-dollar companies. So rather than me tell you where those opportunities are, my challenge is for young people not to only think about what they're against, but what they're for, and to think about how they'll use human and other resources to build new companies based on ideas or resources, because actually their generation has to create the next set of wealth across the economy that my generation and indeed my predecessor generation did. And I don't think you should ask this generation to narrow your parameters. Quite the opposite.
Okay.
I would say, look, it may be in the traditional and classical oil and minerals and so on, but it might be in literally those new service ideas of apps and opportunity.
Okay. And from looking back over your whole career, from being a minister to being Prime Minister to chairing APEC in 1999, what are you most proud of when you look back?
I'm most proud of being a mother.
Yeah.
I've got two fantastic children, and most of what I did in politics and most of what I do today are because I just think that, the things that make me dream of the possibilities are still good ideas, but what it will mean for my own children and their children.
Absolutely.
I have 3 little mokapuna, and they are like the treasures that I would wish for.
Yeah.
So what I've done is, people are very kind, and I'm very proud of that. But actually the purpose, my leadership purpose, was to try and see that New Zealand came from that closeted, inward-looking country to an enormously confident, outward-looking country in terms of how we view and work with the world. The other thing I'm most proud of, if I choose a policy area, is that the settlements for Maori and the society that we are today is, I think, a very much better society than the one I grew up in as a girl. And I think the emancipation of women in the early part of this last century and the emancipation of Maori in the latter part of last century and this century are 2 great stories for New Zealand. And I've been very proud to be part of both of them, because I think they are economic and social success stories that are unlike many other places in the world that I visit.
And with family being so important for you, was it hard to achieve a good work-life balance when you were in politics?
Look, it's demanding, but where things matter, come back to my leadership identity. I am who I am.
Yeah.
Thankfully, Burton, who I've been married to for 42 years, actually thinks that women do stuff too. And even from when I was the youngest girl, he used to say, actually, we have to work this out, because this is my job to make sure when I need to lead, you support me, and when you need to lead, I'll support you. And that's been a lifetime of those stories. And it matters enormously, but it's had a purpose. Burton understood that I had a way of contributing, and he had a purpose in supporting me, so we worked stuff out. And unless you have that purpose, it's hard, and often you get overwhelmed by children and the practicalities of family. But if you have a purpose, it's often easier to say to the children, this is quality time, let's do these things as a family, but this is work time, and now, this is how we're going to care for you, and you need to be confident that We're here for you, but you need to be responsible.
Yeah. And what's your dream still to come, Dame Jenny, today?
It's an interesting question. I still wake up as a leader, and that's both a wonderful opportunity and a burden. I guess my pleasure today is, there are several roles still in me, and I'll continue to pursue those, but I get enormous pleasure out of working with other leaders or developing leaders, both here and abroad. So I'm a vice president of a group of former presidents and prime ministers, and we work all around the world on developing and supporting current leaders, quietly, behind the scenes, and it's enormously rewarding work. So what I hope for the future is to use that leadership capacity to continue to help people develop their thinking and their skills.
Yeah. Fantastic. So I've just got 3 quick fire questions to finish. So from your experience in politics, what does it take to be a politician in summary?
Courage.
Courage? Okay. Thick skin, is that necessary?
No.
No?
Thick skin's a consequence. You need courage. If you
Okay.
have clarity and clarity of why you're there and courage to do what is right,
Yeah.
of course you'll need a thick skin. But
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
have a purpose, a leadership purpose, the thick skin will manage itself.
Yeah.
There'll be tears and there'll be days you'll wonder why you did it.
Yeah.
But if you're sure on your leadership purpose and have clarity of purpose, you'll manage the rest.
Yeah. And could you sum up maybe your top sort of 3 tips for people who are thinking of getting into politics? What would your advice be to them?
Be compassionate, be courageous, and have clarity of why you're going.
Yeah. Fantastic. And the 16-year-old girl you were, what would you think of who you've become today? Would she be proud?
I think that I'm surprisingly like the 16-year-old girl
Yeah.
in those years. My father and mother had raised my sisters and I to be the best we could be.
Okay.
Have I been the best I could be? I still wake up, committed to trying.
Yeah.
And to test that, it's not only what I achieve. I mean, to me, it's like I guess a flock of geese. It gets wider and wider. So success is where more people are involved and more people are contributing. So yes, I've achieved some significant roles, but actually success to me is New Zealand Inc. being very successful at home and a place I want to be, and also highly successful abroad and being well regarded.
Yeah.
And I think I've made a contribution to that.
Fantastic. So thank you very much, Dame Jenny. Just to finish, can you please look down our camera and tell us, what are your wise words for the people of New Zealand?
Dream is dream and do is do, but leaders have that capacity to dream of what is possible and then get on and do it. So I want to encourage you to lead where you can and make a difference.
Dame Jenny Shipley, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Cheers.